Hello, and welcome to SG Squared. Steve Gladen, the global pastor of small groups from Saddleback Church, pulls from his over 25 years of experience to encourage and equip listeners like you to lead small group ministries. So let's listen and learn together.
Welcome to SG Squared. Steve Gladen on small groups. Derek here with the main man of the hour, the man whose very initials stand for small groups. Give it up for Steve Gladen. Steve, how are you, my friend?
Hey, everybody. Welcome into 2025. As crazy as that sounds, it's just a reality. We're dropping the show a little bit later because it normally would have dropped on the 1st. And if any of you are like any of us, we were thinking about listening to a podcast. So it comes to you live on the 2nd.
Yeah, Happy New Year. I literally cannot believe it's 2025. What's happened?
Yeah, they just fly on by, but we're still here. We'll be with you. We'll be with you to welcome you into 2026, Stu.
Now, Steve, tell our listeners, how long have you been at Saddleback Church now doing small groups?
This is 27. See, I think 1998. I'm trying to do my math real quick. 27 years, I think.
Incredible
Or
run. So you
yeah,
started in 98.
yeah, March 1 of 98. So a couple months here I'll flip the dial on another year at Saddleback. It's crazy, super crazy.
Incredible run, my friend.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that. All those years doing small groups at one church, that is something I think to be proud of. But let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we're in 2025, let's take just a minute or two to look back on the year that was
Yeah.
2024. Do you have a top learning regarding small group life, small groups at Saddleback, or anything that comes to mind to look back on the year that was?
Well, lots is happening, lots is changing in our small group world here at Saddleback. But I would say that the macro learning, because Andy has been here now, gosh, almost 2.5 years ish, about 2.25 years in actuality. And although things are in a little bit of a change mode to kind of fit where Andy's going, I think one of the learnings, and sometimes we forget it, is that we're on staff or we're volunteering to serve the lead pastor that is in charge. We're there to help them, move their agenda down the road. And I think sometimes what we forget, I was just at a think tank in Nashville last year, and I was talking to one of the pastors that was doing groups who had a new senior leader that was in, and he had never thought about, dialing the small group methodology around where that lead pastor was. And, one of the things, I was actually just sharing with Derek before we started the show, was that, you know, the majors are staying the same. We're a church of small groups, not with. We're temple courts. We're house to house. Life change happens best in community. We want everyone to have a second step out of the weekend service that lands them into some type of connection that will move them into community. And so the majors stay the same, but sometimes you've got to change language and you've got to change a little bit of your strategy, which will help you kind of be more in alignment with the senior leader. So I think one of the big learnings in 2024, I'm trying to say 2025 as much as I can. So, but in 2024 is the factor of, getting into know Andy and what comes off of his lips. What are the things that where he is gravitating towards from the stage, so that we can come alongside and mimic the same language that he would want to say. Like Rick would always say, an example, Rick would always say, get a relationship and a responsibility. The way Andy's wired, he's like going, we need everyone to get into a group and into a team. And so similar things, similar strategy, but you just got to align everything to work with that. So I think my biggest learning in 2024 is learning, where Andy naturally flows to, so that I can come behind him and build a strategy that serves him best and where he feels the most comfortable. So we're still in the mix of all that. So I don't want to give you any illusion that we've got it all ironed out, but we're getting closer and closer and closer. And I'm praying that by the close of 2025, we're talking a lot about strategy and how you get things working in your small group ministry. And part of one of our things is we've set a goal that by the close of 2025, we want to have all the different components that we've mapped out in place. So lofty goal, but we hope we can make it.
Very nice. Great insight. And here we are in 2025. Now we're looking ahead to the year that will be. And in this episode, we are talking about 4 steps to a strategic 2025. Love that title.
Mm.
And Steve, you're going to outline the 4 key steps. So let's start off with number one. It's to plan.
Yeah. Yeah. And part of what we want to do is, it sounds very elementary and all these steps sound elementary, but you'd be surprised at how many people don't do it. And so one of the things, uh, that can happen, and I've seen this a lot in churches post COVID, is that COVID shut your church down. And on the refire of the church, sometimes you forgot to do some of the things that you always did before. And in the same way, I've been at Saddleback so long, there's things that I've said or I've done in the past that I've totally forgot about. But one of the things that inspired the shows, sometimes when you're getting reminders on what you've said or what you've done through social media, there I came across something from 15 years ago that on this date kind of reminded me, and it's the impetus of what kind of drove the show to be what it is. But it was on Twitter, now X. But this is the quote that I wrote down. And, I'm at that age right now that there's many things that I read about what I've done. I reread my own books and I go, oh my gosh, I wonder who said that. And it was me. But it says, great is hitting the target nobody else can. Now, here's the punchline. Genius is hitting the target that nobody can see. And the beauty about the kingdom work that we're doing is we want to see the unseen. Hebrews chapter 11. We want to be able to be so in sync with where God's going that we're putting some things in motion that that there'll be that alignment between temple courts and house to house. So that kind of sets up the whole show. And the first thing that, as Derek was saying about, is you got to put a plan in place. Now, in order to put a plan in place, you got to know, I would encourage you to do some good review. And in the review, I would go through some different steps of saying, what's the end in mind? What are we trying to produce in our small groups? And just kind of get that back in front of you and make sure you know what's happening. In that, what's our pathway to get to that? When a group first forms, what's that plan that gets them to start to emulate the end in mind? And then looking at the guardrails that are in place to make sure that happens. So what are some of the processes that we have in place, like in leader training? Review your own leader training, look at it. Sometimes you need to go through your own stuff to make sure that what you've created is still in sync. What's your curriculum pathway that you've designed for your people? And then, what are some of the tools that you've put in place? Have you readapted to what technology can do? Are you engaging a lot with AI and using that to help you? So those are some of the processes. And then the people, how is your infrastructure helping you stay in touch with your group leaders? How are you mentoring them? How are you discipling them to help them be models of that end in mind? And, in that, you're going to need a lot of good data. And we talk a lot in past episodes about a CRM system, a customer relationship management system that helps you understand both the soft data and the hard data. And then what are those processes that you're using to get, people connected into groups and looking through those. So as you're building your plan, do a little review of all of the pieces that I've talked about, But then I would also encourage you. I wrote a book that's the link is in the show notes called Planning Small Groups with Purpose. And in that, I wrote 20 questions that no matter what your end in mind is, if you're doing small group ministry, those 20 questions are going to wash up on your shore. And what you're going to find out is that everything I just talked about is peppered throughout those 20 questions. But the first thing you've got to do is you've got to start a plan in place. And the thing that I like about planning is that it really is a step of faith. When you put something on the calendar, a goal that you have in the calendar, is a step of faith that you're saying, God, by your best ability, help me hit that. And that's what we've done as we've looked through 2025, where we've mapped out some big rock things that we want to accomplish throughout 2025. There's some medium rocks and there's some small rocks that each one of our various campuses are kind of working on. So I would just encourage you is that you've got to have a plan in place to make sure that you are putting goals in place and you're putting accountability. Accountability is the next thing. You're putting goals in place so that your plan can be effective.
Yes. Number one is plan, plan, plan. Hey, Steve, maybe just take one more quick minute
Mm-hmm.
to talk about the first thing you said, which was what kind of disciple do you want to create in the end? I remember when I first was onboarding with you, that was the first question you asked me is what kind of disciple do you want to make for your small group ministry? And it was just
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, boof.
Yeah, it really is something. And basically, the process is thinking through if the person next to you is in your small group, what do they emulate? If you've done your job perfectly, and I know none of us will, we're in a fallen nature. No one is going to be that perfect disciple because only Jesus is the perfect person that was on this planet. But if you kind of play it out, what would they exude? What would they do? And at Saddleback, we still fall back on the 5 verbs in the Great Commission, the Great Commandment as our benchmarks for that. Words are changing a little bit to meet the next generation, but the principles are still the same. And so what I would encourage you to do is kind of think through if that person in your small group, in your group leader did what they were supposed to do, what would that person be acting like, and how would their behavior be there? Because what you want to be able to do is change behavior, and you always want to work through somebody to not only just help them learn it, but help them apply it. So I don't know if that answered where you were trying to
Yeah.
go to, but that's kind of like that piece right there.
Well said. Okay. You kind of leaked number two, which it
Sure.
evolves around accountability. Take us to number two.
Yeah, there's a little bit of fogginess in the new year. So, the lifts just kind of flow all around the place. Yeah, after you have a plan, the number two really is you need accountability. And you, it's something that seems so elementary, but if you don't have somebody that is working with you, I'm working with, the people that are in upstream of me that are helping hold me accountable to saying, hey, this is what we need in place, and when are you going to put it in place by? And I do it, to each one of our 20 campuses, trying to be able to say, hey, what are your plans and goals, and what do you want to try and accomplish in this first quarter of this year? But in accountability is not so much me dictating what they should do. I was just with one of our campuses and talked to them saying, with what we've got planned in the first quarter between the Immerse study with Luke Acts and our Dream Now church-wide campaign coming up, what is your goal for groups? And this is with one of our newer campuses that's just starting out, because you'll never get this perfect time of a lot of emphasis on groups in the year. And like so many people, they usually come back and they say, well, what do you think is the right goal? And the thing that you want to do is have a process with the person that's holding you accountable. When you're holding accountability something, you're not saying what they should do, but you're helping them wrestle with. And I said, hey, I need you and your campus pastor to go back and figure out, what do you think you should do? You've got to lean into God, and you've got to be able to say, okay, what is it that the Lord would want us to strive for? It's not just trying to go to hit the target that, nobody else can, but it's about hitting the target no one can see. And God may be leaning something a little bit different on each one of our campuses that I don't even see. And that, as they're praying, they're seeing it with God and the Holy Spirit. And so part of this is the accountability structure is with no accountability, your plans are just not going to happen. If I have found that I can't hold myself in accountability because I like to cheat on myself and I like to, give myself grace and stuff like that. And the other thing that sociologists have told us is that when you speak a goal to somebody else, then that accountability sits deeper in your heart and is also, that somebody else is knowing. Like if I told Derek, this is what we want to accomplish in this first quarter in small groups, when I see Derek and I know him well enough that he'll say, "Hey, how's it going?" And, there's that part of like going, I've got to own up to whether I hit it or I didn't hit it and why and stuff like that. So I would encourage you to get some accountability with other people. And this is people who aren't going to be like doing electroshock treatment with you if you miss your goal, but they're going to be people that are going to be able to encourage you and just hold you with that. I would do that with some people on staff, and I would do that with people that are outside the church. And so it's just a good system. So number one, you need a plan, but plans only succeed if you have some accountability. So make sure you get that person. Tell them, just tell them what some of your goals are for this Q1 or this first quarter in 2025, so that you can have some accountability that is there.
Love it. Accountability, accountability. On the number three, which we didn't leak yet, I'll let you say it, Steve. What is number three?
Yeah, the third thing is to establish a prayer team. And so often, this is the trite answer that really does happen inside of the church world. But really, it is one of the most powerful things you can have. When I wrote Planning Small Groups with Purpose, I always broke it into four things. What is, what's a dream that you have? What are the obstacles that are going to be confronting you in that dream? What's an action plan you want to do? And when do you want to review it? And the reason why a prayer team is so important, that if you do planning right, in the planning process, you're going to be, identifying all kinds of obstacles that are there. One of the common ones that I get when I talk to other churches is my pastor doesn't push groups enough or isn't as excited about groups as I am. Well, one of the things, if you're trying to accomplish your goals, one of the obstacles is going to be them seeing the same heart and passion for groups that you see. And so guess what your prayer team does? Your prayer team just isn't, an antithetical little group of people out there that are just praying for you and, oh God, help their small group ministries to succeed. But your prayer team is praying about very, very specific things, because behind every one of the plans that you put in place are going to be obstacles. And when you identify those obstacles, then, your prayer team knows this is exactly what I'm praying for. These are the pieces that I'm doing. And it can be very exciting, because then they can follow up with you too and be a form of accountability, but also a form of excitement that they're praying for your best excitement to happen. I've got some things that I don't want to quite share them on the airwaves right now, but that are very, personal to how I know groups will be more effective at Saddleback. And my prayer team knows these are the things you're praying for. Now, your prayer team are people that can hold things in confidence. Obviously, if you're gossiping or if you're going to hurt yourself or you're going to hurt somebody else, they're going to break the confidence. But the point is, these are not people that are trying to be your prayer team so they can know the latest scoop of what's happening in the world of your church. But these are people who genuinely just care about praying and letting God's power break down the things that the enemy is trying to stop from happening. So I really would encourage you. You don't have to have a huge prayer team. You can have a very small prayer team, but you need the right people that will pray. Now, your job in working with a prayer team is not just recruiting them, but also making sure that you're feeding them the things that you need. So this is why if you do the planning first and figure out what you want to do, and in that planning process, when you read Planning Small Groups with Purpose, again, the link is in the show notes. But when you start to do the planning process, your dreams are going to be there, but you're identifying the obstacles. And when you're identifying the obstacles, then you can magnify the power of your prayer team by seeing, by so that they can start to pray for the things that the enemy is trying to block. So if you really want to unlock 2025, like I know you do, and I do, and Derek is already wanting to also, is that you not only need to do the things that are in your power, which is planning and having accountability there, but you also want to pull together to have a prayer team in place so that the supernatural can happen in a special way so that you can, make things happen.
Prayer is powerful, even if it's your grandma on your prayer team and she knows how to pray and she's going to keep your confidence. That's good enough, right?
I tell you, it'd be perfect. Many people have said, the power of a mom praying or a grandma praying is, they got some special wiring in them that can make that happen.
Awesome. Well, that saves number 4, and that is review where you are at quarterly. So interesting. We're talking about 4 steps to a strategic 2025. And now, Steve, you're telling us to review where you're at. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, and this is where I would encourage you is in the review process, it's going to be important to do some focus groups with people that are in the trenches doing it, i.e., small group leaders or even small group members. Maybe the people who are helping you manage your small groups, or even the people in your team that are helping you implement it. And the piece that can go with this is understanding that you don't have to have a million focus groups, but you do need to have a little reality check for what's happening. And I want to read to you what we call the 4 helpful lists, because this will help you in everything that you're trying to implement. So let me use an example. If one of your goals is, getting your training dialed in so that it's a lot more fruitful. You may have said from this podcast, "Hey, our training isn't getting us to our end in mind." Then what you'd want to do is maybe do a focus group with some of your small group leaders, uh, maybe a couple people in small groups to find out, is what we're trying to train, is it happening in your groups? And then maybe some of the people that are working on top of it or working on it. And so the 4 helpful lists are what's right. And basically, those are the praises. And sometimes, and maybe you're not like me, but I tend to always gravitate to what's broken, what's wrong, what's out of sync, what's out of step, and forgetting sometimes that there's great praises that are happening. When Derek was kicking off the show, and he's talking about, hey, what is it in review that you've learned from small groups? And sometimes you go, wow, we've made more headway than I actually thought or remembered. And so the first thing you want to do is what's right and start on a positive note. The next thing is asking what's wrong. And in what's wrong, what you're trying to find out is what needs to change. It may be a methodology in training. It may be the medium in training. It may be the trainer. It may be the content. There may be a lot of things that need to change. But the point is that when you get some feedback from people, you can find out not only what's right, because that's what you get from the public. Most people in church world, well, I take that back. I was going to say most people in church world like to tell you what's right. But, post COVID, there's always people that are willing to tell you what's wrong. So maybe that does come, more naturally. But the point is you want to get it in an environment where you can digest the actual things that are there. So what's right? What are the praises? What's wrong? What needs to change? The other thing is what's confusing? And that just needs clarity. sometimes they kind of grab a concept, but it's just not as sharp as it could be. One of the things that we found out from training was that um, we talked a lot about having great conversations, but we didn't give them the tools to help develop conversations. So they kind of knew what they were supposed to do, but we found out that things weren't happening quite as well as we wanted them to be happening. And so we just needed to get some clarity and have to work right there. The other thing, the last question is what's missing. And in what's missing, it's what needs to be added. And so it may be a gap in something that you thought was there or was clear, but it really wasn't there. And so it may need to be something that's added that you're looking at. So as you're looking and you're planning strategically in the reviewing process, what you want to do is pick some components that you're trying to put in place. So when you're looking at a goal that you set for the first quarter of 2025, you at the end of March or at the end of April, depending on how you're dividing up the quarter, what you're going to want to do is start to look back on that one particular goal that you put in place and go, what's right? What were the praises with that goal? What's wrong? What needs to change? What's confusing? That means that what needs to be clarified, and then what's missing, what needs to be added. And so review is always so important for you to understand how to make progress with each thing. And I know as we're looking at these 4 steps, you can go, it's so tedious. There's so much detail that's involved. There's so much extra things. But I will tell you, I mean, I've been doing groups for like 35 years or longer than that, let's just go with 30, because that makes you feel a little bit younger. Still about the age of Derek. Anyways, yeah, I will tell you this. It does, small group ministry distills down into that 4-letter word called work. And there is a lot of work in trying to implement a plan, accountability, a prayer team, and review. It's a lot of work. But if you're wanting to see people get discipled and not fool yourself with false positives, because, you go, how's group? Group is great. It's wonderful and we love everything. The thing is that you're going to have to get into that place where you're not just relying on hallway conversations if group is good or bad, or a lot of people are in group. You may take attendance every week and you find out, everybody's in group, but if they're not producing what you want to produce, then it's a false positive. It's the same thing. People come to church, but it doesn't mean they're always applying what they're hearing. And so, but in groups, you have that great opportunity to have a controlled environment where you can help them move to where you want them to be. So I pray that as we've gone through these 4 steps, and as we, in the review part, talked about the 4 helpful lists, that you can use this to help 2025 hit the goals that you're wanting to do as we start this off. We're here at January 2nd, and you want to take this and just pull it through all the way through the next 364 days.
Well, there we have it, the 4 steps to a strategic 2025. And if you are hearing this today on January 2nd, you are getting way ahead of the game, I think.
Wow.
And so take these to heart. Click the link in the show notes. If you want to go into this even way more in depth, get Steve's book, Planning Small Groups with Purpose. I own this book, and it is a powerful roadmap with all kinds of cool visuals that make it just pretty easy to comprehend. And so, Steve, any last words?
No, I just hope you guys will look at this new year as a fresh, clean slate. It's good to look back and see some things, but a lot of times we can harbor and stay in there. But I want to encourage you to seize 2025 in a special way so that you can get discipleship happening in your church as powerfully as possible.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, thanks everybody for watching or listening to this episode. We really hope you enjoyed it. We hope it encourages you and empowers you to lead better, healthier small group ministries. And until next time, bye.
See you later.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And to dive in deeper, get more resources, or join the Small Group Network, just head over to smallgroupnetwork.com.